Hello, my name is Palma Accardi, and you are watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We're here live at the Irish Pub in Atlantic City. Dan Skeldon will not be making it this evening. However, we will give you a Florence update on his behalf. And we have a special guest for you tonight. We have J.B. Smith. He works for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Nice to have you on here.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
And before we get started, I wanted to ask you how you got started with your career in the U.S. Army of Engineers.
Well, I guess it all started as a young boy growing up in New York City and doing some surfing out on Long Island, and eventually, going to graduate school in Boston and going down to Vicksburg, Mississippi with the Engineering Research Laboratory in Vicksburg, where we looked at coastal research. And here I am now at the Philadelphia district of the Army Corps of Engineers, and I've been there for 13 years, and we continue to look at coastal problems for the part of the Northeast United States.
Now, where did you go to school in Boston? Because we have a Boston grad here in the crowd tonight.
So Boston University.
Okay.
Very informative, absolutely.
Now, in your career, what have you found to be the most successful way of flood protection, really in any area?
Well, flood risk management or flood protection, it's the best way of doing that is a comprehensive approach, where we look at a number of different opportunities depending on where you are. So in Louisiana and Texas, where there's a lot of marshes, we try to use marsh features in addition to the storm surge barriers you may have heard of so much. But in Florida, where there are a lot more beaches, beach nourishment is certainly a useful practice to reduce against flood protection. But as we found out in Sandy, a lot of this flooding comes from behind the barrier island. So where we have a number of dunes and such in New Jersey to reduce the risk of flooding from the front side of the barrier island, we're now concerned with flooding from the back side. So flood walls may be an opportunity, storm surge barriers, non-structural elevation, as well as nature base and marsh creation. Are all opportunities to consider. Now,
you mentioned Florida and a few other places. Have you actually worked there, or have you just done studies on these things?
Absolutely. We've done a lot of work in different parts of the U.S. in my association with the Engineering Research Laboratory in Mississippi, as well as our Coastal Storm Damage Risk Management Center of Expertise with the North Atlantic Division of the Army Corps of Engineers, which is in Brooklyn. So we look at coastal issues on a nationwide perspective.
Now, you recently hosted a public meeting in both Ventnor and Toms River.
That's
right. Is that right?
Yep.
Now, do you believe these issues, especially with the back bays, is that a major concern for our residents? Did you get a lot of people there asking questions and such?
So we had the two public meetings, and very super informative. How the public came out. We had approximately 150 people at each meeting, and they raised a lot of concerns which we're addressing in this study. Obviously, the biggest concern has to do with coastal flooding from storms like Sandy, other northeasters, as well as some of the more nuisance type of flooding which occurs on a more regular basis. So, this study will look at those issues, but at the same time, another concern that was brought up was the environmental concerns of building a man-made structure along the shoreline. And, that's something the Army Corps has always taken seriously, to abide by the National Environmental Policy Act and some of the environmental regulations. So, we have to marry the flood risk as well as the environment at the same time. And I think those are the two major parts that were brought up from the public, as well as the change in their lifestyles. These people really like to live by the beach, and they don't want to move necessarily, so that's something that we definitely have considered in our study, and the Army Corps in general.
Now, Dan and I always talk about how, as unfortunate as Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy was, we think that it brought a lot of public awareness about flood risk. So do you think you would have had that many people, over 150 people there, if it weren't for such a storm to bring people's, awareness level up?
Oh, I think so. That the public's experiencing flooding on a regular basis, with or without Sandy. Sandy does elevate the interest level from a federal congressional perspective,
Okay.
and that helped to get some of the appropriations to perform the study and protect the beaches that front the barrier islands, as we've renourished all of those since Sandy.
Okay. Now, how does flooding on the Jersey coast compare to the other communities that you've dealt with? What are our most extreme conditions?
So, again, the Back Bay flooding is really a significant problem that happens on a large scale as well as a local level. So that's something that is similar that we see in all places we've been to. But one thing about Louisiana is that land is sinking at a very great rate. So Louisiana and the Gulf Coast and Florida, they're all of very, very importance, great importance.
Now, if we were to implement some of these flood solutions, what would be the maintenance after they are completed?
So, a lot of these solutions we talk about, whether it's beach nourishment, the soft solutions, or whether it's the structural solutions such as storm surge barriers or flood walls, these all require maintenance. The beach nourishment, we have a certain periodicity in years that we maintain the beach. That's expensive. As part of the New Jersey Back Bay study, the maintenance for a storm surge barrier is super significant, and we typically cost share that with New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and the state. So those costs for operation and maintenance of these features is considerable, and we're looking at the details of what those costs and maintenance are for storm surge barrier. But that's important, absolutely, because you have to lift the gates of a storm surge barrier for certain conditions, and so it's operation maintenance is important.
Now, would any of the financial burden fall on the individual municipalities, or would they all be federally funded?
So, all these coastal projects we talk about, there is a cost share, a certain cost share for both the study part as well as the construction of the projects. So that the construction of the project is usually 65 federal, 35 non-federal, and that 35% non-federal, there's a cost share to the municipalities for that. So I will also note that the municipalities and the state have been such great partners as we reduce risk from flooding along the New Jersey coast, and the municipalities and the state, they have local efforts that are not federally partnershiped, including storm drains and pump stations, flap valves. So they've got a tough road to hoe, both from partnering with us and the federal government for our larger projects, as well as the more local, smaller scale flood mitigation projects.
And this study that you're conducting for the Back Bays, I believe you partnered with the Department of Environmental Protection. What other ways are you working together with the DEP, and how often?
Sure. So we work with the DEP on a regular basis for many of our projects, not only from a shore protection or flood risk management, but also from a land use and a environmental perspective. And like I said, they've been New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, our sponsor on the Back Bay study, as well as the oceanfront projects. They've been a great partner since we started the shore protection program back in the early 90s.
Okay. Now, I know a lot of communities, especially a coastal community, deals with the community rating system, which is a system where the communities can obtain more points in order to save on each resident's flood insurance policy. Now, would any of these flood solution projects help the community's CRS program in getting points?
Possibly, yes, and that's one of our cornerstones of the work we do at the Army Corps of Engineers, is to partner with the public, with stakeholders, with environmental resource agencies, and with agencies in general. Basically, one of those partners is FEMA, who monitors and manages the community rating system program. So as we implement some of the solutions for our shore protection projects, that may very well help with the community rating system program. For instance, one of the things we're considering in the Back Bay's study is to elevate houses. And when you elevate houses to reduce risk, or when you flood-proof houses, or when you relocate or acquisition of houses, that will reduce the flood risk, which will help to perhaps raise the CRS rating of a certain community, which would reduce the flood insurance rates that individual homeowners pay. So, the study is on the order of 5 years in length, so that gives us some time to reach out with individual agencies to incorporate our different programs.
That's what I was going to ask you. For projects on such a grand scale, what is the process and the time frame, especially for this Back Bay project or other flood solutions?
Sure. Well, so where this all started is after Hurricane Sandy. There was a congressional authorization and appropriations for a larger scale study, the North Atlantic Coast Comprehensive Study, and that set the stage for focus areas up and down the East Coast, where we're looking at Back Bay flooding. One of those was the New Jersey Back Bay study, which started in 2016, and originally it was a 3-year study. But we all put our heads together and had some interaction with the public and stakeholders about the scope of the study, the difficulties of the study, how we build storm surge barriers across 12 inlets, how we tie in those storm surge barriers to the existing dunes, and how we protect the environment. So with that, the length of the studies will increase to currently 5 years. So our study will end in 2021, and after that we go into a detailed design and then construction element. So we're not going to construct this in one time, one fell swoop, but we hope to start incremental construction for smaller projects or different elements of projects with higher risk, where there's greater flooding in 2025, 2026. So I know that sounds like a long time, but given the scope of the study from Monmouth County all the way down to Cape May, we want to do diligence on looking at sweating the details. Then this is what we need to do, and there are a lot of people involved in interest groups. So we also want to give them some time to review reports that we're going to put out. We're planning on putting out a report for public and stakeholder review early next year, early in 2019. So there will be a process to be involved for the public and for stakeholders in reviewing that report, just as we've had these public meetings, just earlier this week. So we're working hard on this, and it's going to take some time, but
good things take time, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Parma.
Well, Now, you've worked in all these other communities, and I'm sure you have actually completed a lot of these projects before. Have you seen the after effects of them? Have they, have they weathered the storms in the past?
Well, absolutely, Carmen. You can see that in New Orleans with the construction of storm surge barriers and pump stations to pump the water out. And there were storms, since Katrina in New Orleans where that's worked. But more locally, during Hurricane Sandy, there were some beaches where we had dune systems in place, and other beaches where there were no federally constructed dunes, and the difference in destruction of personal residences on the Barrier Island was vastly different, where we had a dune, much lower level of destruction compared to where there was no dune. So the shore protection projects that we have absolutely are beneficial, and they also bring a lot of economic benefits to the area. If you look back in Ocean City, for instance, before we started working with the Department of Environmental Protection of the state in New Jersey to build the Beach Nourishment Project in dunes, the beach was right under the boardwalk, and you'd only have a beach at low tide. So now that we've constructed a beach, there's a wider beach that brings more people. The people spend money buying a slice of pizza or an ice cream. So beaches have a definite effect on the economy,
Of course.
both on a national level and a regional, local level.
Now, a follow-up, sort of. The cost of these projects, how do they compare to what they save? The flood damage that they prevent?
So good question. It's one of the critical elements that the federal government considers as they authorize a study. So we compare the damages reduced, the flood damages reduced by a certain construction project, which translates to dollars saved or benefits to the costs of constructing the project. So each project, we have to maximize the benefits according to an economic account, the National Economic Development Account, and then compare that to costs. So all these civil works projects across the nation, whether it's flood risk management or recreation or flood mitigation or beach nourishment, have to meet these criteria where the benefits are greater than the costs, and that's the benefit-cost ratio.
Okay.
So that's that.
So that is a major factor in when you are studying and doing your research on whether to implement these solutions.
Absolutely, and that requires that we perform modeling to look at flood levels over a number of ranges of flooding for different storms. For this case, on the coast, we have to look at sea level rise over a certain number of ranges, and we have to perform that modeling to look at that. We also have a number of models that we consider to look at the economics. What are the economic benefits? And we plug that into the models. And our experts are subject matter experts, both in the Philadelphia district, the North Atlantic division, as well as our engineering laboratory in Mississippi, do that on a regular basis.
Okay, I do want to take the time out to say hello to our Facebook viewers. Trina House says waves. Pamela Haynes gives a thumbs up. We have hello and a hi from Paula Sabati. Lorraine says Ocean City always floods. And Jimmy wants to know if these projects are union. And Liz also waves. So that's our Facebook viewers. And do want to also say we're brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, which I know there are several people from the Army Corps of Engineers that go to those meetings, which are held monthly. So I guess working together, we do try to work on flood mitigation. And Dan also asked for me to give you a Florence update. Florence is now a tropical depression, still over the Carolinas, causing record flooding. It's weakening and will continue to do so, but the leftover rains are heading up the coast. 1 to 3 inches of rain is likely to our north and west, but the worst will stay up there and miss us by a safe distance, central PA and upstate New York. Is that where your headquarters are, New York? Or no?
So Philadelphia is our district headquarters.
Okay.
And then New York is where our division headquarters is.
Okay, so are you working mostly in Philadelphia then, or?
That's correct, yep.
Now, how does flooding compare Philadelphia to New Jersey?
Well,
what type of flooding do you get there?
Well, New Jersey is coastal along the coast.
Okay.
Philadelphia is more, while it is still tidal, there's less tidal effects, so it's fluvial and riverine flooding from mostly rainfall events.
Okay. I know we get flooding from rainfall too. We think we're a year-round flooding threat here on the coast. Also, Dan says we'll see some showers and a thunderstorm or two on Tuesday, potentially with a few heavy downpours, maybe an inch of rain possible. No widespread flooding is expected, and the rest of the week looks nice starting on Wednesday. No more tropical activity to worry about as of now. So is there anything else you'd like to say to our viewers on the Jersey coast before we wrap it up?
Sure. So, following Hurricane Sandy, that was a wake-up call, and we see that we still get storms with significant flooding, whether that's a significant storm surge event or just localized tidal flooding. So we all have concerns, and we just want to stress working together with the federal government, the state of New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, our partners, as well as the local municipalities and the public. So let's continue the communication as we move forward. Look forward to a report which will be distributed to the public for review of some of the findings of our New Jersey Back Bay study. And just one shout out to the Coastal Coalition. The Army Corps regularly attends your meetings, and it's really good information to bring folks together on the local municipal level and share ideas so that us at the Army Corps of Engineers can participate in that. And Parma, thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Really appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. Now, after you distribute these reports, do you expect to have another public meeting, or if not, how could the public ask questions if need be?
Sure, that's a great question. So we're not sure we're going to have a public meeting after the report, but I think a webinar is in store for early to mid next year associated with the release of the report. Yeah.
Now, will that be posted on your website, or how would people know that that's coming?
Yep, that'll be posted on the website, and we keep in close touch with some of the elected officials.
Okay.
So we send emails to them, but we'll make sure everyone knows about that.
Well, thank you so much again, Jay, and sorry that Dan is not here, but we would all like to thank you for joining us tonight with an Irish Pub
awesome.
T-shirt. And again, we're brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, and you could follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and check out our website, njcoastalcoalition.com. And that would be it.